Think about this. You spent years in school. You learned algebra. You memorized historical dates. You dissected sentences. You studied cells, atoms, wars, and formulas. But no one taught you how taxes work. No one explained credit scores, or investing, or how inflation quietly erodes your savings, or how debt compounds against you the same way interest compounds for you. You graduated knowing how to solve for X, but not how to grow a dollar. Why? Why do schools spend over a decade preparing you for exams, but almost no time preparing you for money? The answer is deeper than most people think. And it's not just about oversight. It's about structure. Let's break it down. First, understand what schools were originally designed to do. Modern schooling systems were built during the Industrial Revolution. Factories were expanding. Corporations were forming. Governments needed a literate, punctual, obedient workforce. Schools were designed to produce workers. People who could follow instructions, meet deadlines, sit still for long periods, respect hierarchy, perform repetitive tasks consistently. Look at the structure. Bells dictate movement. Authority figures control evaluation. You're rewarded for correct answers, not creative risk. You're penalized for deviation. That system works well for creating employees. It does not work well for creating investors, entrepreneurs, or financially independent thinkers. Because financial literacy requires something different. It requires questioning systems, understanding leverage, taking calculated risks, and most importantly, thinking independently. That's not the primary goal of traditional education. The goal is standardization. Money education is not standardized. It's dynamic. It changes with markets, policies, innovation, and behavior. Teaching it requires adaptability. Most school curriculums move slowly. Markets move fast. There's another layer. Financial literacy challenges existing power structures. If everyone understood how money truly works, compound interest, asset ownership, taxation strategies, business structures, fewer people would make poor financial decisions. And fewer poor decisions mean less dependence. Dependence fuels systems. Independence disrupts them. This isn't conspiracy. It's incentive. Schools are funded and regulated by governments. Governments operate on tax revenue. Consumer behavior drives tax revenue. Debt drives economic cycles. If everyone aggressively avoided consumer debt, maximized tax efficiency, and prioritized asset ownership early, the system would look very different. Again, this isn't about intentional sabotage. It's about priorities. Financial education is not the priority. Economic participation is. There's also the comfort factor. Money is emotional. It involves fear, scarcity, comparison, status, and survival. Teachers themselves are often not formally trained in personal finance. Many operate within the same system. Student loans, mortgages, retirement accounts they don't fully understand. You can't teach what you were never taught. So the cycle continues. But there's another important truth. Financial literacy doesn't benefit from memorization. It benefits from application. You don't understand investing by reading a definition. You understand it by investing. You don't understand cash flow by defining it. You understand it by managing it. Schools are optimized for theory. Money requires practice, and practice involves risk. Schools avoid risk. Mistakes in school lower grades. Mistakes in investing can lose money. That kind of experimentation doesn't fit neatly into standardized testing models. There's also the timeline problem. Schools prepare you for the next exam. Financial literacy prepares you for the next 40 years. Compound interest is boring at first. Its power is invisible early. It becomes dramatic later. Teenagers rarely feel urgency around retirement accounts. But by the time urgency appears, time has already passed. Financial education requires long-term thinking. And long-term thinking is not rewarded in short-term grading systems. Another reason is cultural. For decades, the dominant narrative was simple. Go to school, get good grades, get a stable job, work hard, retire safely. That path worked in previous economic environments. Jobs were stable, pensions were common, costs were manageable relative to income. Today's world is different. Gig economies, automation, inflation, market volatility, global competition, but institutions change slowly. And education systems are some of the slowest to adapt. By the time curriculum changes, economic landscapes have already shifted. Now let's talk about something deeper. Financial literacy changes identity. When you understand money, you stop thinking like a consumer. You start thinking like an owner. Instead of asking, "What can I afford?" you ask, "What can I build?" Instead of spending first and saving what's left, you invest first and spend what remains. That shift in mindset changes behavior dramatically, and behavior drives outcomes. Schools rarely focus on ownership psychology. They focus on employability. There's a difference. Employment trades time for money. Ownership builds assets that generate money independent of time. Ownership requires initiative. Employment requires compliance. The system rewards compliance more predictably. Another factor is simplicity. It's easier to teach standardized math than personalized finance. It's easier to teach general history than individual budgeting. Money decisions are personal. Risk tolerance varies. Goals vary. Family background varies. Teaching financial literacy effectively requires nuance. And nuance is harder to standardize. But here's the most important part. Just because schools don't teach it doesn't mean you can't learn it. In fact, the responsibility now shifts to you. We live in the first era in human history where financial education is widely accessible. Books, courses, podcasts, interviews, online platforms. Information is no longer scarce. Attention is. Most people don't lack access to knowledge. They lack prioritization of it. Financial literacy isn't hidden. It's simply not handed to you. And that difference matters. When something isn't handed to you, you either ignore it or seek it. Those who seek it change their trajectory, because money obeys rules. And once you understand the rules, the game changes. You learn that income alone doesn't create wealth. Spending habits matter more than salary. You learn that assets generate income. Liabilities drain it. You learn that inflation silently taxes savings. You learn that compounding rewards patience. You learn that diversification reduces risk. You learn that emotional decisions cost money. None of this is mystical. It's mathematical. But without exposure, most people never internalize it. So they operate reactively. They earn, they spend, they borrow, they repeat, and decades pass. Now consider this. If a student graduates at 22 and waits until 32 to start investing seriously, they've lost 10 years of compounding. 10 years that cannot be replaced. That's the real cost of financial illiteracy. Not embarrassment. Time. Time is the most valuable financial asset. And it's the one schools rarely connect to money. But let's be fair. Schools do teach foundational skills. Math enables financial understanding. Reading enables research. Critical thinking enables evaluation. The tools are there. The application isn't emphasized. And that application must be self-directed. So what should have been taught? Basic budgeting. Understanding income versus expenses. How taxes actually work. What credit scores influence. The difference between good debt and bad debt. How compound interest works, both for and against you. How investing works at a basic level. What assets and liabilities are. How businesses generate profit. How risk and reward are connected. These are not advanced concepts. They are foundational. Yet many people learn them only after costly mistakes. Why? Because financial pain often becomes the teacher. Credit card debt teaches interest. Market crashes teach volatility. Job loss teaches diversification. But lessons learned through loss are expensive. Education is cheaper than recovery. And self-education is often the fastest path. Here's the empowering part. You are not behind. You are early if you start now. Financial literacy is not reserved for economists. It's practical knowledge. And it rewards consistency, not genius. You don't need to predict markets. You need to understand behavior. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be patient. Wealth is rarely built through dramatic wins. It's built through disciplined habits. Save consistently. Invest regularly. Avoid unnecessary debt. Increase skill value. Build assets. Repeat. Over time, small disciplined decisions create massive separation from average outcomes. And that separation doesn't happen because of school. It happens because of awareness. The system may not teach you about money, but the world will. Through bills, through taxes, through opportunity, through mistakes. The question is whether you wait for pain to teach you, or choose curiosity to teach you first. Because once you understand money, fear decreases, clarity increases, options expand, and independence becomes realistic. Schools don't teach you about money for structural, cultural, and historical reasons. But that gap is not a life sentence. It's an invitation to take ownership of your education, to study what directly impacts your freedom, to think beyond employment, to build beyond consumption. Financial literacy isn't about becoming obsessed with wealth. It's about becoming competent with resources. And competence builds confidence. Confidence builds opportunity. Opportunity builds leverage. And leverage builds freedom. You weren't taught, but you can learn. And the earlier you begin, the more powerful the compounding effect becomes. Not just in money, but in mindset. Because once you stop waiting to be taught what matters, you start teaching yourself what changes everything. And that shift alone separates those who drift financially from those who design their future deliberately. The classroom may not have covered it, but your life will. The only question is, will you learn by default or by decision?